is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic Podcast, sponsored by Rack Coach. Excited today to have Josh Bailey of the Rocket City Line Clinic. Josh, how are you doing today? And for the people that don't know, because this is a national broadcast, introduce yourself to the clinic, Coach.
Sure. Hey, guys, I'm Josh Bailey. I coach the offensive line at Huntsville High School in Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville is a city about 45 minutes south of the Tennessee border, located in Alabama. It's currently just recently surpassed Birmingham. It's the largest city in Alabama, and it's growing really fast, so it's a great place to be. We are hosting the Rocket City Line Clinic in Huntsville. Huntsville's known for there's a NASA base down there in the arsenal and all that, so that's where the Rocket City thing comes from. Last year was our first clinic. Last year we had offensive line coaches and defensive line coaches come to present. This year we whittled it down to just offensive line coaches, and we have a great group of presenters, and it's coming up soon. It's actually St. Patrick's Day weekend, that Thursday and Friday, so that'll be March 16th and 17th. So we're getting rolling, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, Coach, I'm going to present your screen, and we're just going to talk a little bit about the clinic. So this is the second year of doing it, and this is how smart I am. I think Rocket City, I'm thinking Houston. So I go and tweet out Houston. And, Coach, I don't know geography. If you watched any of the other clinics, we've done over 80 in 30 days. All right, so we're a little obsessive, and I love clinics. If I could travel to Alabama to go to your clinic, I probably would. So this used to be a one-day clinic, which turned into a podcast. And when I ran my clinic, I never got to hear anybody. But now I get to talk to everybody and meet guys like you. So today you're going to be talking about the clinic, but we'll get you back on and we'll talk some offensive line play. But, man, I've been so blessed to meet Jim McNally. Bring him. I don't know if you know this, but one of the things I hang my hat on as a coach is that I was the person that coached Jim McNally up to get him on Twitter.
Oh, nice.
It was last Saturday. So I've known him for 8 days. He calls me every day. He texts me every day. It took me an hour to change 2 pictures on his Twitter and to change his name from Jim McNally 567893 to Coach McNally OL. And now in 7 days, he's gone from 2 followers to over 2,000. And he is an animal.
Last Saturday, when I noticed him on Twitter, of course, I'd seen him on the cool clinics and everything. And I'll be honest, I thought it was a parody account because he was tweeting in all caps, and it just looked like a kind of like
I told him that
on the internet kind of meme almost. But it was the real deal, and I was so excited because I remember being young or being a young coach, and I mean he was super influential to me too. So it's awesome.
It was funny because I had texted him randomly one night. I had his number from a clinic, and he said, okay. And then I was like, I got to talk to him. So I talked to him. Then I got him on this, and he says, this is Zoom. And I was like, no, it's not Zoom. It's StreamYard. He's like, can I have a podcast? I was like, Coach, you've already should have had a podcast. Yeah. He was like, how are people going to know that I'm going to be on your podcast? I said, well, Coach, do you have Twitter? He goes, yes, I got 2 Twitters. And I said, well, Coach, let me help you and set it up. And we had 8,000 people watching on Twitter last week with the help of the high school football chat, Texas high school football chat. So, Coach, it's been such a blessing to get to meet him. And John Strollo came on yesterday for 2 hours. I mean, John Strollo said that his wife told him that he didn't let me speak. I was like, Coach, nobody wants to hear me. They want to listen to the med ball guy. So, right. Coach, I mean, I love your graphic there, Coach. Is that new, or did y'all have that last year?
We had this last year. So, like I said, last year it was it was offensive and defensive line. So, actually, last year on the logo, on the right-hand side, there was a defensive lineman on the other side of the rocket there. So we altered it a little bit for this year. And I just make everything in Canva. It's super simple. But yeah, I mean, offensive line coaches, they're some of the most accessible people out there, I've come to find. And kind of like with what we have going on in Huntsville, it kind of just started spontaneously. I'd had the idea that I wanted to do something like a cool clinic in Alabama for a while because there's just really nothing. If where I am in North Alabama, if you want to go to a clinic, you'd have to drive to Birmingham, and from Huntsville, it's roughly a 2-hour trip. You'd have to drive to Chattanooga, roughly a 2-hour trip. And I find myself making these trips and hearing these awesome speakers and everything, and that's great. But only 1 or 2 of them out of a 8 or 9 person lineup would have anything to do with the offensive line. And so I thought, man, how awesome would it be if we had a clinic just for us, And so kind of toyed around with it. And my head coach is Mark Fleetwood. And he spent, before he was at Huntsville, he was in Georgia. And he actually had the opportunity to coach Orlando Brown when he was in high school, now with the Chiefs. And last year, I guess around this time, he brought up the idea of bringing down Orlando and just having a, chalk talk, just, all that kind of thing. And it was at that point that the light bulb kind of clicked, and I thought, man, I wonder if we could advertise that and get some coaches here, and that might be a great opportunity to, kind of start the clinic. Well, Orlando Brown didn't come, and nothing happened like it was planned. But one thing that was great was there were several coaches that I just, randomly reached out to that quickly reached back out, and we're excited to participate in something like that. I mean, it's just the willingness to help and the want to help young coaches. I mean, it's just huge in the offensive line community. I'm thinking of like Coach Stephen Ciochi, or Ciochi. He came down and he spoke in Huntsville last year, and the dude coaches football in Rhode Island, and I call him and I say, hey, look, man, this is a first-year deal, totally, grassroots operation. I don't know that I can pay you a penny. I don't know. And at the time that I called him, I didn't even have hotel reservations secured or anything. I mean, it was just totally on a whim. And he said, yeah, man. He said, I coach I recruit down in Florida around that time of year anyway. I'm cruising through. Yeah, I'll just stop and I'll take a night and stay in Huntsville. And he was so willing, and it just blew me away. I mean, it was fantastic. And this year, same kind of situation. Bobby Johnson's coming down from New England University to talk. So it's just, we have a very gracious and humble community as offensive line coaches, and that's something I'm very proud of, and I want to kind of foster that best I can.
And I appreciate you keeping that going, because, I mean, the GOAT, Coach McNally, he started the Cool Clinic. He started the Mushroom Society. Do you know why they call us the Mushroom Society?
I've heard the story, but I can't remember, so remind me.
It's basically because one guy, we're mushrooms. Basically, we're kept in the dark and we're fed crap. And that's why we're the Mushroom Society. The O-line coaches and the O-line are the Mushroom Society. So Coach Stephen Gucciani, I hope I'm saying your name right, Stephen. He just started today watching the clinic online, and we're only streaming on YouTube. We used to stream on 2 Facebooks, LinkedIn, 3 different Twitters, but everything's going right to YouTube now. And he says, thanks for helping Coach McNally out, Troy. I'm able to follow him now. And you're right. I told Coach McNally, I said, Coach, will people think that this is really you? I was like, because they might think it's fake. Yeah. And he said, well, why would it be fake? I'm the only Coach McNally. Because he wanted his name to be Coach McNally. And I said, well, Coach, there's probably somebody that's already got that name. But yeah, you're right. I guess once he started with the film, and started talking the techniques, it was like, nah, it's really him.
Yeah.
Now he's tweeting at Elon Musk. I mean, this is going to be fun. Dude, he's getting ready. He's going to pass Paul Alexander, dude. Since he was Paul out, he's just so interesting. I mean, he's great, man. God, he's great.
Yeah, he's a very eccentric human, and he's a good communicator. So yeah, I was thrilled to see him on Twitter. So
did you hear the story that I told him? I said, anybody can coach Anthony Munoz, Coach, but coaching you up to start a Twitter, that's the best coaching job I've ever done in 25 years. Oh man, he laughed. He thought that was so funny. Yeah. Okay, Coach. So Steven, we appreciate you, man, for tuning in. Josh going to go through his speakers. We're going to talk a little bit about each of the guys and what they're going to talk about. We just want to help promote the clinic. That's why I got Coach on here.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So everything that you need information-wise on the clinic, you can find at our Twitter. That's what I'm actually casting from right now. This is all graphics from our Twitter. And could you see when I moved that?
Yeah. Can you shout out your sponsors?
Yeah, I sure will. So our first sponsor that I want to mention is the Huntsville Sports Commission, and they were huge. I mentioned that first year. We were reaching out for sponsors, trying to figure out a way to get this thing paid for. And we have, this year we have 7 speakers. They're all offensive line coaches. Last year we still had 7 offensive line coaches, but we also had 7 defensive line coaches. And so it was pretty ambitious bringing 14 coaches to Huntsville, and assuming that, oh yeah, people want to come see and get it paid for. But it ended up working out. The Sports Commission was huge in that. They gave us a lot of help, and thanks to them. Also, Sports Workbook reached out to us this year. They're helping us do a thing. If you buy a ticket with us, the Rocket City Line Clinic, then you get 15% off a purchase for Sports Workbook for purchasing a ticket. So they partnered with us this year. Also, Chris Haddad and Victory Sports, they always come down, or they came down last year. They're coming down again this year, we don't want any money from those guys. They just come down and hang out. They're awesome. Chris and those guys are so great, and they kind of film it for us or do some filming for us and help us get it pumped out there. So, but again, the big thing is our speakers this year I'm super excited about. So I guess I'll get started talking about those guys. That's why I have this picture pulled up here. On the top left picture, our first speaker is Steven Sorrells. He's the offensive line coach for the Edmonton Elks. And I actually reached out to him last year, I invited him. I'm sorry. I invited him to the clinic last year, not to speak, just to attend. And then he ended up the offensive line coach for the Edmonton Elks, just so happens to live in Greenville, Alabama. Who'd have thought that? And so I reached out to him and he said, sorry, coach, because our clinic last year was in June. And he said, sorry, coach, our season has already started at that point. He said, but if you do it at a different time next year, I'll be down in Alabama. And I just thought that's so wild. He's going to be talking about A-gap power. Last year, he actually wasn't with the Edmonton Elks. He's newly with the Edmonton Elks. Last year, he was the run game coordinator for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, also in the CFL. And so, and then next is, I've already mentioned him a little bit, Bobby Johnson. Coach Johnson, you can find a lot of his content on YouTube. Actually, I remember being a young, shortly after I got my job at Huntsville, going to YouTube and watching Bobby Johnson's pass protection drills and a lot of his SCAC having to do with, pass protection. So he's great. He's going to be talking about, this is one of the topics I'm most excited about. He's going to be talking about pairing up your screen game with your run game. And we've seen a lot of run screens recently. I'd say probably more than I've seen, since I've been watching football, with the screens off the backside of the gap scheme stuff. And so I'm super excited to hear about some of that.
I want to ask you something about these run action or play action screens. Have you ever seen the movie We Are Marshall?
I have. It's been a while.
Okay. I've never seen the movie, but Coach McNally was the offensive line coach after the plane crashed. And I taught this to my class. The first game that Marshall played after the plane crash, the quarterback snapped the ball. He had been on the team the year before, wasn't on the plane. And they ran a screen. And it was, Coach McNally still remembers the play call. It was like 212 bootleg screen. It was a run action to the left, quarterback bootlegged, and the gun sounded to end the game. And the guy threw a screen pass, and they scored a touchdown and won their first game after the plane crash, after the gun had sounded, off of a play action screen. And Coach McNally still remembered the name of the screen. So isn't that crazy, man? I mean, it's like the Damar Hamlin deal with the guy running back the kick,
Yeah, no doubt.
Wow.
And I think that's going to be something that you're going to see more probably in high school ball. I don't know about you guys, but just where I am, you don't see a lot of run action screens. And there's such good restraints, and they're so cheap, and they're so safe. And they're great PN10 plays, great 1st and 10 plays. A great way to get your screen game involved, on obvious run downs, when a lot of people, how many guys have you seen play a whole game and they don't run a screen or a draw unless it's 3rd and 10 plus? And so it's a great way to kind of mix it up and change that. And I'm excited about that. So, all right. So the next is Brandon Herring. Brandon was formerly the offensive line coach at Sanford. And for the past several years, he has been the strength and conditioning coordinator for the athletics program at Hewitt-Trussville High School. Hewitt-Trussville is it's a very large high school in the Birmingham area. They're very, very good at everything, it seems like. And Brandon is responsible for training all those athletes. He's going to be talking in particular about offensive line strength. So from a strength coach perspective, right? Because, if you follow the strength community on Twitter, they one of the big things that they kind of like lean into is differentiation, right? So like, especially in football, like we don't ask our athletes all to do the same things. The skill set for a receiver is a lot different than the skill set for my guys. And so, training wise, it would be beneficial, best you can, it would be beneficial to differentiate your training for those guys. And so how can you do that? I'm very excited to hear Brandon talk about strength as it pertains to offensive line play. Brandon's also going to be speaking at the NHCSA Clinic in Prattville, Alabama, March 4th. So next weekend. And it's a strength and conditioning clinic. So if you're listening and you're in the Southeast and you're interested in strength and conditioning stuff, that's the place to be. It's going to be all strength all day long from guys that are certified and know exactly what they're doing. So, and Brandon's a class act. All right. Following him is Coach Chris Yeager. Coach Yeager is the head coach of Mountain Brook, the Mountain Brook Spartans. They went to the state championship this past year. But that's not the most impressive thing about Coach Yeager. Coach Yeager is one of the most unique personalities that I've met in the football universe. And the way that he thinks about leadership and some of his ideas on how to lead a team are just so interesting and different. Because everybody in the world talks about culture, and everybody in the world talks about ways to build a culture, and everybody sounds the same when they talk about it. And so the reason I reached out to Coach Yeager to come speak at the clinic was because it's different. And then next is
what's different about him? What's different about him?
Great, I'm glad you asked. So he's got a few programs that he has, and I won't get too in depth. I don't want to speak on his behalf. But he talked some of it. I went to the Alabama 35 under 35 summit this past summer, put on by some guys, some high school football coaches in Alabama. And it was young coaches that, have intentions to be a head coach one day, and older coaches that are already head coaches giving advice. It was super interesting and neat. And Coach Yeager was there. And when I listened to Coach Yeager, I'd never heard of any of this stuff, but there was a person listening to him talk, and they said, "Hey, can you tell us about your Tip of the Spear program?" And, they're the Spartans, Tip of the Spear, I guess that's where that comes from. And it was a program that they did that had something to do with grades combined with athletic performance, combined with attendance, all that coming together to create this group of people on the team that they would refer to as the Tip of the Spear.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about all of the ins and outs of it, but I can't wait to hear it when he comes to talk to us. But one quote that I'll give you from Coach Yeager was regarding those kids in the Tip of the Spear and what they get for being Tip of the Spear was he said, "Well, you can't pay high school athletes, but you can spoil them, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And so doing things like he mentioned, things like giving them gear, T-shirts, bobbleheads with them on it, things like muscle milk, things like snacks, and things like voting power within the team to make specific decisions. These are all like really good ideas. So that was the Tip of the Spear program. And then he also had another program called the Spartan Guard. And again, I'm not going to get too into detail, but I'll just mention a couple things that are memorable. The Spartan Guard, best I understand, are the 9 kids on the Mountain Brook football team that are the most trusted by the other players on their the other guys that they play with. The way Coach Yeager described it was he tells the guys, "Hey, if you had to get in a fight with a kid, who would you pick on the football team? 1, 2, 3. And if they don't answer in 3 seconds, then they don't have an answer." Well, those top 9 kids that are mentioned are members of what he called the Spartan Guard. And this is the unique thing that I remembered about it. He said that, they're ranked 1 through 9, according to, however he does that. And number 1 may be a left tackle, right? Or maybe a person that has to wear an ineligible number or whatever, right? Those guys on the Spartan Guard on their roster are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In the program, they wear the number 1 jersey at pep rallies. They wear it to school for all intents and purposes. Like the number one in the Spartan Guard for Mountain Brook this past year, say he was like a left tackle, right? And his number in the game was 73, right? So he wears number 73 in the game, right? But that's the only time that he wears number 73. For all other intents and purposes, he's number one. He's number one in the program. He's number one in all other cases. And for an offensive lineman, that's huge. That's I would love to have been in a single digit number. That would have been so cool. And
yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And so, and there's lots of other things. That's just a tiny little piece.
The first thing reminds me of Urban Meyer's Champions Club, which we do. It's based on you got to have a 3.0 GPA. You got to have 80% of your workouts. You got to have no suspensions. And then the second thing, I mean, that's revolutionary because everybody wants a single digit number. And this guy, Coach Yeager's reward system, which is like positive, it's based on guys embracing the process, not awarding talent or because you're a good player. It's awarding people who embrace the work.
Right. I remember Coach Yeager. He this will kind of give you an idea of how his mind works. I guess it was this time last year. He posted a video from one of his games, and the end zone view, they film with a drone like a lot of other people do now, And so it was a really cool, like kind of aerial view of a kick return. And one of the guys from Mountain Brook, returned a kick return all the way back, right? And Coach Yeager wanted to point out the sideline, the Mountain Brook sideline. And those kids were just going nuts. I mean, there wasn't a kid on the sideline that wasn't just going nuts that Mountain Brook just returned a kickoff for a touchdown. And in that Twitter post, Coach Yeager brought to my attention a word. It's I know I'm probably not pronouncing it right. It's spelled Mudita, like mudita or something like that, right? Mudita. It's a Sanskrit word, and we do not have a word, a one-to-one corollary in the English language. And what that word means, mudita, is a passion or an excitement for someone else's accomplishments, right? And so we can describe that in the English language, but there's not a word, right, that we have that just means that, right? That I'm excited, but not just for what I did, for someone else, right? But just bringing that to the attention and talking about how important that is, that we are excited for the other people on our football team and playing for a bigger purpose, playing for the team, That's the kind of stuff that he just kind of brings to light. It's kind of an interesting, different way of looking at it. Anyway, I look up to Coach Yeager a lot. I'm looking forward to hearing him. All right, next is Evan McKissick. Evan is the tight ends coach at Troy. He's been all over. He was a GA at Kentucky. He played at Troy, and he was also at one point the tight ends coach at Murray State. And obviously, they just had a phenomenal year at Troy this past year. He actually invited us, the Huntsville High staff, a few of us, to Troy this past year, and they were the most gracious group there at Troy. They let us come in. It was this past April, so about a year ago, and we came in and we got a hotel in Troy, and we spent the night. We went up there on a Friday, I think it was, or maybe a Thursday, I can't remember. Spent the night, but the day that we got in, we were able to sit in their meetings. We were able to watch how they kind of handle the meeting room and talk with them. I mean, we hung out there the whole day. So they're just super, super gracious. And then the next day after we spent the night, they had their scrimmage. It was their spring scrimmage. And so those guys at Troy are awesome. And Coach McKissick is just he's fantastic. He's personable. He's a great communicator. And I'm definitely looking forward to hearing Coach McKissick.
Is his dad John McKissick?
I'm not sure. I do know that before he was coaching college, he coached with Rush Probst at Hoover. That was back in the two-a-days times on MTV. And so
wow.
Some people might see Coach McKissick and think he looks familiar back from the MTV days. So anyway, next is Coach Anthony Colucci. He's going to be talking pin and pull. Last year, one of my great friends, Scott Curd from Shorter, came to talk how they do pin and pull at Shorter. And this year, I'm looking forward to hearing how Coach Colucci and Birmingham Southern does the pin and pull, because everybody knows there's 100 different ways to do it. And so I'm looking forward to that. Coach Colucci actually, just this past offseason, was promoted to the head coach at Birmingham Southern. Before that, and actually when I first reached out to him, he was just the offensive coordinator and run game, or offensive coordinator and offensive line coach. But now he's the head coach of Birmingham Southern. So we're super excited for that. And lastly, we have Cortland Hayes coaching junior college ball in Mississippi, and he's going to come talk about protecting the passer. They've had some really good passing teams, and so looking forward to that as well. Overall, I think we have a really good group of speakers. I think it's a well-rounded group. On Thursday, well, here, actually, I'll do this. So here's our schedule, just very quickly. So our check-ins Thursday on the 16th, starting at I think we'll be there at 1. We will take walk-ups, but if you go to our Twitter, the sign-ups there, the Eventbrite, if you're in the region and you'd like to come. The reason I went to this is we are going to have a social on Thursday night, and for me, that was the best part of the clinic last year. We'll be at Fractal Brewing Project. It's a little brewery very close to the hotel that we'll be at. The clinic will actually be hosted. In case anybody's watching this that came last year. Last year we actually had the clinic at the high school. That was problematic for us because we couldn't get guys that coached FBS football, any of those guys to come because of compliance issues. And so this year we have moved the clinic to the Embassy Suites by Hilton in downtown Huntsville. And there will be, like I said, there'll be a social at Fractal Brewing Project right down the road from the Embassy Suites. It's probably a 3-minute drive. Definitely Uber there and back. Last year we had an open bar. I'm sure we'll have an open bar again this time. And it was just an awesome time talking to guys and chopping it up. So I'm looking forward to it again this year.
So anybody that wants to sign up for the clinic, Coach, let them know how to do that, how to contact you, or anything else you'd like to say before we get off here, Coach.
Yeah, sure.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you see on Twitter, all of our posts have the Eventbrite link right here. And so if you click on this link, it'll take you to our Eventbrite page where you can just purchase tickets here. Okay, ticket purchase is $50. That includes the price of your ticket. Of course, also, if you pay $50, you'll be added to our Google Drive. Our Google Drive has clinic presentations from it will have clinic presentations from this year, of course, so you can go back and rewatch or whatever. It also will have clinic presentations from the previous year. And so if you buy a ticket for $50, not only do you get a ticket to come to the social and all that, you have access to that drive, and you can come watch or go watch last year's presenters too. So I think it's pretty good value.
Heck yeah, Coach. Well, I appreciate you coming on. We'll have you come back on whenever you want to talk about some O-line play, Coach. But thank you so much. And I hope everybody that's down there in Southeast Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, y'all need to get to this clinic, the Rocket City Line Clinic. And thank you, Coach. Have a wonderful Sunday, brother. If you need anything, hit me up.
Absolutely, Coach. I appreciate it. Y'all take care.
Thank you.